lot of nods, so I'm assuming that is correct. And then the defense, do you have any conflicts with the panelists?
The defense has no conflicts with the panelists, Your Honor.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and get started. Actually, there's one member missing. So what is the name of the student that is missing?
Adele Donda.
Adele
Donda.
Donda.
Yes.
Do either any of the three panelists recognize that name?
No.
No.
Okay, so
No.
we can, I'm sorry?
No.
Thank you.
Sorry, this is Ms. Ellis. I do not have any known conflicts with that name.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much, Ms. Ellis. So let's go ahead and get started. So is the prosecution ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Would you like us to address our preliminary matters first, or would you like us to introduce ourselves?
No, we're going to do some preliminaries before I ask for introductions. First of all, I want to make sure that everybody can hear me well, and nods are okay. If you have a problem, I want you to raise your hand. Just wanted to let you know that we're not going to have any breaks. So other than when Miss Donda arrives, I want to be informed. Hopefully she'll be allowed into the Zoom and I'll notice her as she comes in. I do see that as timekeepers, we have for the plaintiff, Kate Melman, and for the defense, Ava Margalit. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that name. Is there going to be a standard procedure for timekeeping?
I time in 5-minute increments until the last 5 minutes, and then
Okay. And are you going to post them on the chat, or are you going to show your video?
in the chat, and then when there's 1 or 10 seconds left, I will turn on my video.
Excellent. And if
And
Ms. Melman,
I'll be following the same.
thank you, Ms. Melman. I appreciate that. So just to make sure, I want to make sure that we keep on time because of this deadline. So if you can continue to post them on the chat, that would be helpful to me so that we make sure that we keep track of everything. So at this time, I'd like the plaintiffs to introduce yourselves. But before I do that, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Elsa Martinez-Tenredo. I'm a judge with the administrative courts, and I will be presiding over the proceeding today. Who is lead counsel in this matter that will be introducing for the plaintiffs?
That would be me.
Ms. Dallin, you may go ahead and introduce yourself.
And would you like the introductions first or preliminary matters?
Introductions first, and then we'll deal with preliminary matters.
Okay, and my co-counsel just arrived.
Okay.
My name is Katie Dolan, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams, and presenting the closing argument on behalf of the plaintiff.
Thank you. Who is the next attorney?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Adele Donda, and today I will conduct the direct examination of Dakota Weirs and the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs.
Thank you, Ms. Donda. And your next attorney.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Madeline Malens, and today I will be performing the opening statement, the direct examination of Carson Durst, and the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt. May our witnesses please introduce themselves?
Yes, they may introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Millie Bjork, and today I am Dakota Weirs.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs.
Sorry. Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Tommy McKissick, and today I'm Carson Durst.
Good afternoon, Mr. Durst.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I'm Kyle Letko, and today I will be playing Dr. Casey Rogers.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers. And for the defense, could you please introduce yourselves?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Jasper Bloom, and I will be delivering the opening statement on behalf of the defense, conducting the cross-examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, and conducting the direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom.
Good afternoon. My name is Carter Squirrel. I'll be conducting the cross-examination of Carson Durst and the direct examination of Skylar Weirs.
Thank you, Mr. Squirrel.
Good afternoon. My name is Brianna Hush, and I will be conducting the cross-examination of Dakota Wheels, the direct examination of Blake Doncourt in delivering the closing argument on behalf of the defense. May our witnesses now introduce themselves?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Hirsch.
Good afternoon. My name is George Bradley, and I am Blake Doncourt.
Good afternoon. My name is Ava Batye, and I am Skylar Weirs.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon. My name is Kobe Horowitz, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you very much to all of you. Okay, so I know that I have on occasion forgotten to do this process, so I will do so now. I would like everybody, both in the courtroom or virtual courtroom, obviously, to raise their right hands. And actually, first I'd like the team members to please their right hand. Do you promise that the presentations you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. And the witnesses, please raise your right hand. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. And obviously we can't see a gallery, so I am going to assume that they promise to represent themselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after the mock trial rounds. Now, the scoring panelists, could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible and in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? Thank you. You may all lower your right hands. What I'd like to do from here on out is only have those participants that are relevant to the examination that is taking place remain on the screen. Therefore, while we do opening statements, and I'll do procedures in a second before opening statements. But when we have opening statements, I'll want both counsel that are going to be doing the opening to be on screen. Everybody else can fall off, hide their icon if you want to, if you're not involved with a particular witness. But the attorney for both sides needs to be on during the direct and cross-examination of a witness, so to speak. So first, for the plaintiff, are there any preliminary matters that need to happen?
Yes, Your Honor. We ask your permission for all admitted exhibits for both the plaintiff and defense to be published to the jury once they are admitted.
Any exhibits that have been admitted or shared on the screen and requested to be admitted will be posted to the jury.
Thank you. And we ask that exhibits for both the plaintiff and defense not be screen shared until they are admitted.
I'm going to take that on a case-by-case basis, and depending on the situation, we'll either allow it or not. So,
Your Honor,
yes.
the defense would ask that screen sharing exhibits be allowed to authenticate them to be constructively shared outside of the jury's view during authentication of exhibits with the witnesses.
Because we are in a virtual world, I think that is the best way of being able to authenticate exhibits, since the witnesses and the attorneys are not in the same room. That's how we are going to proceed today. Ms. Dallin, do you have any other procedural matters that need to be addressed?
Yes, we ask to reserve any time remaining in closing argument for rebuttal.
It will be reserved.
Thank you. And finally, we ask that if there are any technical difficulties, that time be stopped for both the plaintiff and defense.
Absolutely. We're going to take that into consideration, but I need you, both teams, to understand that we will have a hard stop at 4 p.m., whether you're finished or not. So take that into consideration while you're doing your trial.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. I have no further matters.
Thank you, Ms. Dallin. Mr. Bloom, do you have any procedural matters that need to be addressed?
A few, Your Honor. First, we would like to ask that if there are any technical issues preventing a team member from rejoining the Zoom, they be allowed to update their team members via text message so that we know what their progress is in attempting to rejoin.
You may communicate for anything other than for trial matters, for no discussion of witnesses or testimony or the facts of the case. If it's procedural, such as finding out where they are or requesting specific time remaining, I don't have a problem with that. Ms. Dallin, do you have any objections to that?
No, Your Honor, I do not.
And Ms. Dallin, while we're doing procedural matters, if you could remain on the screen. Ms. Bloom, Mr. Bloom, any other procedural matters?
Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to recognize that there are two Weirs in court today, and we would ask to be able to call them by their full names as opposed to just their last names in order to keep things clear for the jury.
That sounds reasonable. Ms. Dallin, do you have any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
That will be all for the defense, Your Honor.
Thank you so much for this. Hopefully, we have dealt with all preliminary matters. Okay. Ms. Dallin, are you still there?
Yes, Your Honor.
Just stay on the line until we go ahead and get started. I apologize that I have forgotten who is doing the opening for the plaintiff, Ms. Dallin. Is that you, or is that another member of your team?
That will be my co-counsel, Madeline Malens.
Okay. Are the plaintiff ready for opening statements?
The plaintiff is ready, Your Honor.
And Mr. Bloom, are you ready for opening statements?
Yes, Your Honor. To clarify, would you like me to keep my camera on while the plaintiff is presenting their statement?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Ms. Dallin. You can turn off your video now as Ms. Mellons is here. Is it Mylens or Mellons?
It's actually Mullens.
Mullens? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mullens. You may proceed with your opening statement.
Good afternoon, counsel, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Madeline Malens, and today I represent the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs. Profits over people. This is a case about a company that put their profits first, in front of their employees, safety regulations, and most importantly, Miss Dakota Weirs' life. Picture this. A young woman who had her whole life ahead of her. She had an acceptance to Juilliard, a promising musical career, and a job that she loved. Now, picture this. This same young woman was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, effectively ending her life as she knew it. This young woman is Miss Dakota Weirs. Today, she will describe for you how she can no longer play the piano, a favorite pastime that brought her closer to her grandfather, or how she can no longer chase her dreams at Juilliard or work or even volunteer anymore. And why? Why has Dakota Weirs' life permanently been altered? Because Lush Fertilizer puts profits over people. Today, the plaintiff has the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence that Lush Fertilizer's negligence is responsible for Miss Dakota Weirs' cancer. This is a burden we gladly accept. First, the plaintiff will show that the defendant, Lush Fertilizer, manufactured a fertilizer product containing a chemical compound known as Drufo. This isn't in dispute today. Secondly, the testimony will show that Lush Fertilizer was negligent by failing to exercise reasonable care to prevent the product from creating an unreasonable risk of harm. Today, you will hear from Carson Durst, a former Lush employee that was crucial in the development of Drufo. He will testify that Lush knew that its product could cause cancer in its non-baked form. You will also hear testimony from Lush's own CEO, Blake Doncourt, that he was aware that Drufo posed a risk to consumers like Ms. Weirs, yet he still chose to not bake his product. Why? Because he claims that it's too expensive, even though Mr. Doncourt will testify that baking Drufo would only impact his profits by 2%. Yes, only 2 pennies for every dollar he makes. Third, you will hear evidence that Ms. Weirs was one of the people that Lush should have reasonably expected to use their product. Ms. Weirs herself will testify to this. She worked as a landscaper at Haven Landscaping and used a fertilizer manufactured by Lush that contained Drufo. Finally, the evidence will show that Ms. Dakota Weirs had damages that were caused by Lush's negligence while the product was being used in a manner that Lush should have reasonably expected. To prove this, you will hear testimony from Dr. Casey Rogers, who has studied Drufo extensively. She will explain that there is, in fact, a link between Drufo and cancer. You will also hear that Miss Dakota Weirs has a twin, Miss Skylar Weirs, and the only aspect of their lives that's different is that Dakota Weirs works as a landscaper where she was exposed to Drufo, whereas Skylar Weirs did not. The plaintiff will prove its case by a preponderance of the evidence, after which you must consider the affirmative defense claim, which is that Ms. Weirs failed to do something that reasonably careful people would do to protect themselves from the claimed danger of this product, and that this negligence led to her cancer. The defense will say that Drufo's label contained a caution statement and safety recommendations. Yet, these warnings only referenced eye irritation, not the fact that the primary active ingredient in the fertilizer is a known carcinogen. Members of the jury, Ms. Weirs does not have eye irritation. She has cancer. And while nothing can reverse this, it is time that Lush pays for their actions and stops putting profits over people. That's why, members of the jury, the plaintiff asks that you find in favor of Ms. Weirs and against Lush Fertilizer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mullens. Mr. Bloom, are you ready to do your opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may proceed.
The plaintiff just told you that this was a case about a corporation that put its profits over people in an attempt to place blame on Lush Fertilizer. But this blame is misplaced. That's what this case is really about. Misplaced blame. My name is Jasper Bloom, and I, along with my co-counsel, Brianna Hirsch and Carter Squirrel, represent the defendant, Lush Fertilizer Incorporated. The case today is about Dakota Weirs. Ms. Weirs worked for a landscaping company with several fertilizers, including that which was manufactured by the defendant. After being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, Ms. Weirs, understandably distraught, wanted someone to blame, and she's attempted to blame Lush Fertilizer. the evidence today will show that that blame is misplaced. You will hear from the plaintiff today first. First, you will hear from Carson Durst. Mr. Durst is a former Lush employee who was fired for poor performance. Mr. Durst claims that Lush knew of a possible carcinogenic effect in its fertilizer and that it pressured researchers into finding that Drufo was safe to use. Despite this, Mr. Durst waited a decade and a half to bring up these concerns to anyone. His claims rely solely on a purported email that has not been found even after Lush turned over all its email servers to the plaintiff's own lawyers. Next, you will hear from Dakota Weirs herself. Ms. Weirs will tell you that her non-Hodgkin lymphoma was caused solely by the negligence of the defendant, Lush Fertilizer. But Ms. Weirs will also admit to forgoing the use of personal protective equipment when working with fertilizers. Ms. Weirs will also cite the lack of a warning label, but you will see this label and how it clearly recommends the use of said personal protective equipment. Finally, you will hear from Carson Durst. You will hear from Dr. Casey Rogers. Dr. Rogers claims to have a study linking non-Hodgkin lymphoma to Drufo, but not only is the study fundamentally flawed, it has not been peer-reviewed, it has not been replicated, and it has not been published. Next, you will hear from the defense. First, from Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer. Mr. Doncourt will testify that after rigorous testing, all evidence pointed to the safety of Drufo and the lack of a necessity to bake the fertilizer because of the minimal risk it would have prevented. Next, you will hear from Ms. Skylar Weirs. Skylar Weirs is an expert scientific investigative journalist who will tell you that fertilizers with Drufo in them are safer than those without because of a reduction of nitrate in the soil. Finally, you will hear from Dr. Devin Williams. Dr. Williams has several decades of experience in the field of toxicology and has worked at the Lush R&D labs for 10 years. Dr. Williams will testify to the overwhelming statistical evidence for the safety of Drufo. He will also clarify its ban in the EU, which, despite what the plaintiff may like you to think, is not over possible carcinogenic effect in Drufo, but over misplaced concerns in the environmental effect of Drufo, which itself was caused by poor testing conditions. Members of the jury, today the plaintiff has the burden of proof. They must prove two key facts. First, they must prove that Lush Fertilizer was negligent. And second, they must prove that that negligence led to the cancer of Miss Dakota Weirs. By the end of the trial today, the plaintiff will have failed to meet this burden, as the evidence will show that Drufo is not carcinogenic and that Lush was not negligent. The evidence will also show that if there was any negligence in today's case, it was that of the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs herself. Members of the jury, it is then up to you to find the defendant, Lush Fertilizer Incorporated, not liable on the plaintiff's claim of negligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Are the plaintiffs ready to proceed with their case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may go ahead and call your first witness then.
Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to call Ms. Dakota Weirs to the stand.
Thank you, Ms. Danda. Ms. Weirs, thank you for being here. We've already administered an oath, so we don't have to go through that process again. So, Ms. Danda, you may proceed with your case in chief.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Dakota Weirs.
Ms. Weirs, will you explain for the jury why you brought a civil action against Lush Fertilizer?
Of course. I'm here today because I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I believe it was caused by using Lush Fertilizer.
How has that diagnosis affected your life on a day-to-day basis?
It's ruined my life. I mean, I can't do any of the things that I used to love.
Before you got sick, what was your life like?
Gosh, I mean, I really lived my life to the fullest. I did everything that I loved. I had a job at Haven Landscaping. I worked really, really hard in school. I was a part of National Honor Society. I volunteered. And of course, the most important part of my life was playing piano. I even got a scholarship to Juilliard to play piano there.
Why was playing piano so important to you?
Playing piano was something that I've been doing since I was a little girl. I would waddle on over to the piano and I would just find the music so beautiful. I still do. And it's especially important because my grandfather was actually the one who taught me to play piano. He unfortunately passed away not too long ago. So playing the piano now is a way for me to still feel connected to him, even though he's not really there.
What are your plans for the future?
Well, my plan was to go to Juilliard. As I said, I got that scholarship and I was so excited to play piano there and follow my grandfather's footsteps. But little did I know that possibly meant following him to the grave.
What do you mean this was your plan?
I mean, now that I can't play piano, I just feel like my life is really over. And if I can't play piano, I can't go to Juilliard. And playing piano connected me to my grandfather, and I don't have that anymore. And this is when I knew my life was truly over. And this is just one of the many things that this disease has taken away from me.
What else has this disease taken away from you?
You could say this disease has taken away everything. I can't do any of the things that I said I used to love. I can't work. I can't volunteer. I used to love taking care of people, but now it always feels like I'm the one being taken care of.
I'm sorry to hear that. Now let's talk about your family. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I have a twin, Skylar.
Growing up, how did your life differ from your twin Skylar's life?
It didn't really differ at all. We were typical twins, really good friends, practically attached at the hip, you could say. Except when I was 14, I got a job at Haven Landscaping and Skylar did not.
Was working at Haven Landscaping the only difference between you and Skylar?
Pretty much.
What was your relationship like with Skylar?
Our relationship was good until I got sick. Like I said, we were friends. And then once I got diagnosed, our relationship it started to plateau.
What do you mean it started to plateau?
Everything in our family started to be about money because I was costing such a burden on my family to pay my medical bills now. And Skylar ended up developing a gambling problem.
Now, will you explain a little about what you did working at Haven Landscaping?
Of course. So my technical title was a landscaping technician. I would work with a ton of different lawns, fertilize them, just make sure they were healthy. But the really only life-altering part of that job was ultimately working with Drufo.
What do you mean by life-altering?
Had I not have worked with Drufo and Lush Fertilizer, I might still be going to Juilliard and living out my dreams. But again, we're here today and I'm not doing any of that.
When did you stop working there?
I worked there all of high school, but I eventually had to stop when I got sick.
Now, please refer to Exhibit 1. What is Exhibit 1?
Exhibit 1 is a copy of the Lush Fertilizer label.
And how often did you use Lush Fertilizer?
Well, I worked there for about 4 to 5 years and we had a ton of different clients. So I used the fertilizer a pretty decent amount.
So how often did you see this label?
I mean, I don't have an exact number, but like I said, I used the fertilizer a pretty decent amount. So I also saw this label a lot.
Where did this exhibit come from?
My old boss sent it to me.
Is this a true and accurate copy of the label you saw on the Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Exhibit 1, do you have any objection to Exhibit 1, Ms. Hirsch?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 will be admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to publish Exhibit 1 to the jury?
Exhibit 1 is now published to the jury.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Weirs, did anything on this label concern you?
No, I didn't really think anything of it. The only hazard, so to speak, is that it may cause eye irritation, and these safety recommendations don't really have any sense of urgency. And the fact that it only says it could cause possible eye irritation honestly made me disregard the whole thing.
Did it indicate that the product may cause cancer?
No, nothing on here indicates that you're going to get cancer from using it.
So why didn't this label give you concern then?
When you buy a pack of cigarettes, for example, there's a pretty clear warning that smoking will probably give you lung cancer. So you know when you use cigarettes to be cautious. But when you look at this label on Lush fertilizer, the only hazard is warning may cause eye irritation. Eye irritation is not the same as cancer.
Could you please read what it says under the user safety recommendations in Exhibit 1?
Yes. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended.
Did you wear any protective clothing such as long pants or a long sleeve shirt or even a mask?
No, nobody did.
Why didn't you wear any protective clothing?
Had I known the real danger of this product was going to ruin my life and possibly kill me, of course I would have followed the recommendation. But according to this label, the only danger is eye irritation. How is wearing long pants supposed to protect my eyes? How is wearing an N95 mask gonna help me not get eye irritation?
Finally, will you explain what you want out of this trial?
Of course. I want to prove that working with Lush fertilizer made me sick. My grandfather died. My dreams died. I might die, and I want to be able to speak up while I still can.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions, and I pass this witness for cross-examination.
Thank you, Ms. Donda. Ms. Hirsch, do you have any cross-examination of Ms. Dakota Weers?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Wheels. I'd like to begin by asking you a few questions about your job at Haven Landscaping.
Of course.
Now, you worked at Haven Landscaping in the summers, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you worked there for several summers.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were working there, you used Lush fertilizer, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you also used a few other fertilizer brands.
Yeah, we used a couple others as well.
Mm-hmm. So we'll get back to these several other fertilizers in a moment, but I'd like to talk a little bit more about your usage of Lush. Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to publish Exhibit 1 to the jury, which has already been admitted during direct examination.
The exhibit's already been published to the jury. Did you want to share it for purposes of asking questions of this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may go ahead and do so.
Now, Ms. Wheels, I'd like to direct your attention to the part of this label noted the user safety recommendations. Now, you'd agree with me that it says here that, as with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin, correct?
I do agree.
And you'd agree with me that it says that use of a respirator or an N95 mask is recommended.
Recommended.
So you would agree with me that in the user safety recommendations, it says that you should be wearing a respirator or an N95 mask, correct?
I believe it says that these are recommended.
So it does say that, isn't that true?
Recommended, not that I have to.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were aware of these user safety recommendations when you worked with Lush, isn't that true?
I was aware of them.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't wear protective clothing, did you?
No, nobody did.
Mm-hmm. So you, just to clarify, you specifically did not wear protective clothing?
No.
And you didn't use a respirator, did you?
To protect my eyes, it didn't make sense.
So you didn't follow the user safety recommendation of wearing a respirator?
No, I didn't.
And you didn't wear an N95 mask?
No.
And your boss also recommended that you always cover your face when working with chemicals. Isn't that true?
Yes, but I loved feeling the fresh wind on my face.
So your boss did recommend this, isn't that true?
Yes.
And you didn't follow that recommendation, did you?
No, I did not.
Now, I'm going to move away from Exhibit 1, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of the other products you used. Now, you used these other products. So just to clarify, you used other products while working at Haven, correct?
Yes.
And these other products all had labels on them.
I mean, of course.
And so the Lush product label is here in court today, correct?
Yes, it is.
But you'd agree with me that the labels to the other fertilizers you used are not?
No.
And you'd agree with me that a list of the names of the other fertilizers you used are also not here today?
I don't really think that's necessary.
So you'd agree with me that they are not here today?
No, I don't see why they should be.
And you'd agree with me that you didn't do any specific research into these other fertilizers?
I didn't need to.
So you didn't research these other fertilizers, correct?
Again, I didn't see a reason to. Once I found out that Lush had Drufo, I knew that this was the cause of my disease.
And so just for clarity's sake, you did not look into any of the other fertilizers that you used on this job, correct?
No.
And you didn't always wear the protective clothing you were recommended to with these either, isn't that true?
No, nobody did.
Your Honor, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Any redirect, Ms. Danda?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Miss Weirs, was it required to wear protective gear?
No, it was a recommendation.
Is there a reason you didn't wear protective gear?
Of course. One, it was so hot in the summer and wearing it would have just been so uncomfortable. Two, the only hazard on this label is eye irritation. Had I known that the real danger was going to ruin my life, I would have done it. But according to this label, there's no reason to.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Danda. Given that limited redirect, Ms. Hirsch, do you have any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Weirs. You may be excused at this time. Ms. Melez, sorry. I still don't know if I have it correct. Would you like to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Mr. Carson Durst to the stand.
Mr. Durst, you've already been sworn in. You may proceed, Ms. Melez.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Durst. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hello, my name is Carson Durst.
Did you ever work at Lush?
Yeah, from about 2003 to 2006.
I would first like to talk about your time spent there. What did you do?
Well, I was originally hired as an intern for the R&D team, and then after about 3 months, I was promoted to a full-time position as a product development engineer.
And what was your biggest project while at Lush?
Definitely working on Drufo.
And what was your specific involvement in this process?
Well, my role mostly involved going over different research and stuff like that. And while I was performing my role, I came across one study from England that found that Drufo may be carcinogenic in rats, but I couldn't find another.
I'm sorry, Mr. Squirrel. I did not hear the objection. Would you repeat it for me, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection hearsay.
Okay. Ms. Malens, do you have a response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Durst is testifying to this to lay proper foundation for the introduction of Exhibit 3, which I intend to enter into evidence.
Any other response?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Durst was testifying to the contents of Exhibit 3 and saying Exhibit 3 is not in evidence yet. It is not, he cannot testify to the contents of such.
So with that in mind, the fact that Exhibit 3 is not yet in evidence, Ms. Malens, could you ask your next question?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission for my co-counsel to share the copy of Exhibit 3 for authentication purposes for the witness.
You may do so.
Mr. Durst, do you recognize this exhibit?
Yeah, this is the study I was just referring to.
And when did you come across this exhibit?
While I was conducting research as part of my job at Lush.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of the study you previously mentioned?
As far as I can tell, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for Exhibit 3 to be entered into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense objects on hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement going to the truth of the matter asserted, therefore it is not admissible under hearsay.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. I am not offering this exhibit for the truth of the matter or its contents, but rather to show that Lush had notice of this study and did not act on it.
The exhibit will be admitted, not for the truth of the matter, but will be admitted for purposes, demonstrative purposes, that Lush was provided with a copy of the study at the time Mr. Durst was working there.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Durst, who did you tell about the research found in this exhibit?
Well, normally once everyone's compiled their findings, we give them to Jerry, who's our product manager, and then he sends it up flagpole.
And what did you observe management's reaction to be of this study?
Well, I can't say exactly what their reaction was, but about a month later, we received an email that Lush would be conducting its own in-house study regarding whether or not Drufo is carcinogenic.
And how are you instructed to do this study?
I received an email from Jerry Langley.
Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to share Exhibit 4 for the purposes of authentication.
You may go ahead and share.
Mr. Durst, do you recognize this exhibit?
Yeah, this is the email.
And how were you made aware of this email?
I received it in my work inbox.
And again, who sent you this email?
Jerry Langley.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of the email you previously mentioned?
As far as I can tell, yes.
At this time, I move for Exhibit 4 to be entered into evidence.
Any objection to Exhibit 4 being admitted into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense objects under Rule 1003, as this is a duplicate and the defense has a genuine question about its authenticity. May I have an offer of proof to show why we question its authenticity?
You may make an offer of proof, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll have our witness, Blake Doncourt, testify that he has never received this email. And in fact, we turned over our entire email servers to the plaintiff's lawyer, and they were unable to find this email within them. Because of this, we believe that it is a fabricated email. And because it is a duplicate and we question its authenticity, under Rule 1003, it cannot be admitted.
Any response, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor. Under Rule 1004C, an original is not required if the party against whom the original would be offered for had control of said original.
I am going to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence at this time. It looks like it was authored by Lush and provided to the CEO of Lush.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Durst, can you please read the first line from the second paragraph, starting with following our labs through the end of that sentence?
Yes. Following our lab's June Drufo study, concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities identified in samples produced during a period early in the year.
And who else received this email?
Well, you can see there's 7 people. You can't see who received it, but on the recipients list, you can see Blake Doncourt's name.
And was there any reaction from management to your knowledge after this email was sent out that talked about Drufo having carcinogenic qualities?
Well, I guess it was my impression during weekly meetings that there was certain pressure from management for the results of this study to be read a certain way.
And what did this pressure from management feel like?
Well, I felt as though management was encouraging us to conduct the study in such a way that would bury the causal link between Drufo and cancer.
Now I would like to talk more about the actual in-house study that Lush performed. How did management handle the results of this study?
Well, we were all gathered in a meeting, and one thing I remember about that day that was a little weird was that Alex Monroe was there. He was a upper echelon manager, and it wasn't normal for someone like him to attend one of our meetings. And during one of these meetings, I remember one of our female scientists brought up not just cancer, but specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I remember Alex Monroe said something to the tune of, "We'll keep this in the walls until we figure out what we're doing." And then about a month later, a copy of the final report hit my desk.
And what did this final report conclude?
It essentially concluded that more research was required before any conclusions could be drawn between Drufo and cancer.
And to your knowledge, was there anything missing from this final report?
Well, I don't know all the data that everyone compiled, but based on my personal role in the study, a lot of data was left out and it was pretty misleading.
Lastly, did this report make any safety recommendations?
Yes, it recommended Drufo should be baked to eliminate any safety risks.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Mullins. Mr. Squirrel, do you have cross-examination of Mr. Durst?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Durst. First, I would like to talk to you about your former job at Lush Fertilizer. It's true that you're a full-time product development engineer, correct?
Yeah, I was.
And it's true that nearing the end of your time at Lush Fertilizer, the quality of your work was criticized, was it not?
Yeah, that felt a little strange to me because it did come on the heels of a lot of this Drufo cancer stuff. So it felt a little suspicious to me, but no, it is true that my reviews did decline.
In fact, you even had to sign a performance improvement plan, correct?
Yeah, I did end up having to sign one of those.
In 2005, you had learned that you still hadn't turned things around, correct?
Yeah, and that, I felt as though I was putting forward good quality work. So I was a little, I was a little confused about that, honestly.
So yes, you learned that you had to turn things around.
Yeah.
And Mr. Durst, just to keep things clear for the court, I ask that you answer with a yes or no. Thank you. And Mr. Durst, I would like to talk to you now about your current job at Terrace Greenery. It's true that you do work for Terrace Greenery, do you not?
Yes, I do.
It's true that Terrace Greenery is a rival to Lush Fertilizer, is it not?
Yeah, I believe they both make fertilizer.
In fact, Terrace Greenery has a rival product to Lush Fertilizer, does it not?
Well, yeah, like I said, they both make competing fertilizers.
And once again, yes or no answers will suffice. Thank you. And moving on to this report, which supposedly links Drufo to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, it's true this report was unable to conclude whether or not Drufo is linked to any long-term health effects in humans, correct?
Yes, it concluded more data was required.
It's also true that this report only recommended baking Drufo, correct?
Yes, to eliminate any safety risks.
And it's true that you did not have full access to all the data analyzed for this report. Isn't that correct?
No, only my piece.
Thank you. And now I would like to talk to you about how this report was concluded 18 years ago. It was concluded 18 years ago, correct? In 2003?
Yeah.
And when you first heard about these possible carcinogenic risks, did you come forward to the public?
Not to the public, no.
And in fact, despite being concerned about possible carcinogenic risks, you did not come forward to the public about these possible carcinogenic effects for 18 years, correct?
Well, I mean, it took 18 years for there to be a lawsuit.
And so you did not come forward about these possible carcinogenic effects for 18 years, correct?
Right. Well, like I said, I guess the time to come forward was now.
So yes, it's been 18 years.
Yes, it has been 18 years.
Thank you, Mr. Durst. And then once again, I ask you, answer with yes or no questions. All my questions are phrased so you may answer like these.
I'm sorry. I'm answering concisely. I'm trying to provide necessary context to answer fairly, but I'll be concise.
Yes, Mr. Durst. Now, moving on to your relationship with the Doncourt family. It's true that Mr. Doncourt and the whole Doncourt family was like the family you never had, correct?
Yes, we were very close.
Mr. Doncourt especially has been a long-term mentor and close family friend, has he not?
Yes, he was.
Yet when you went to complain to Mr. Doncourt about your declining performance, he told you to, quote, grow up and do your job, correct?
Well, yeah, and that felt a little unfair to me, honestly, because I wasn't being taken seriously. But yes, that is what he said.
And when you went to complain about your supervisor, Jerry Langley, to Mr. Doncourt, he told you that you were lucky to even have a job, correct?
Yes, and again, that just felt unfair because I felt as though I was putting forward good work. And at the time, it was coming on the heels of me kind of raising a fuss. And so it felt a little suspicious. But no, that's true. He did say that, yes.
In fact, after this interaction, you were seething, were you not?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty upset. It was a long-term family friend that kind of just snubbed me. So yeah, it did. I was pretty upset.
And so you decided to apply for a job at Terrace Greenery, a factor of which was to take revenge on Blake, correct?
Yes, I'd say the primary reason was mostly because I could see the writing on the wall that my time at Lush was coming to an end. So, I needed a job. But no, definitely part of it was I knew that it would upset him.
So yes, taking revenge was a factor.
Yes, it was a small factor.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Sproul. Ms. Melend, do you have any redirect of this witness?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
You may proceed.
Mr. Durst, does your job entail informing the public of any potential findings?
No.
What exactly was your responsibility at Lush when discovering findings or studies?
It was to find information and give it to Jerry Langley.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mullen. Based on that very, very brief redirect, do you, Mr. Squirrel, have any other questions for Mr. Durst?
Just a brief recross, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that you were concerned about possible carcinogenic effects?
Yes, and that's why I put it in my notes. And if Jerry was doing his job, he should have seen that. So.
And isn't it true that you previously testified Lush could not be trusted to act upon this information?
Well, yeah, based on my time at Lush, I don't think they are to be trusted.
And it's true that you still did not come forward to the public?
Well, no, I mean, like I said, it took 18 years for there to be a lawsuit.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Durst, for your testimony today. You're excused. Will the plaintiff have another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to call Casey Rogers to the stand.
Thank you, Ms. Dallin. Dr. Rogers? You may proceed, Ms. Dallin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Could you please state your name for the record?
My name is Dr. Casey Rogers.
Now, you say that you're a doctor. Are you a medical doctor?
No, my PhD is in agriculture and entomology.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a professor in the horticulture and entomology department at the University of California, Berkeley.
What degrees do you hold?
Well, I have that PhD from UC Berkeley, and then I also have a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from CSU.
Did you do research to get your PhD?
I did.
What kind of research have you done?
Well, before I got my PhD, I worked as a research analyst for a large multinational chemical company. But since I got my PhD, I've published many scholarly articles about the effects of exposure to chemicals, which includes DRUFO.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm asking the witness and opposing counsel to look at a copy of what has been previously marked as Exhibit 6. Permission for my co-counsel to share her screen for authentication purposes.
Certainly.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, do you recognize Exhibit 6?
I do. It's a copy of my curriculum vitae and just shows my educational and professional work background.
Who prepared this document?
I did.
Does this document accurately show your education and qualifications?
It does.
Do you remember off the top of your head all of the various details about your extensive qualifications?
Not off the top of my head. That's why I write it down and like to keep this CV updated.
Did you make your CV at a time when the information was fresh in your mind?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for the admission of Exhibit 6.
Any objection to Exhibit 6?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 6 will be admitted and published to the jury or to the panelists.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Dr. Rogers, what are you currently researching?
Well, I'm working in the environmental chemistry and toxicology laboratory at UC Berkeley, and a lot of my research looks at the effects of chemicals on humans and on other life. And a lot of my research is important to minimizing the hazards of pesticide exposure to humans.
And seeing that you're a research analyst, what are the main focus of your research publications?
Well, in the last 9 years, I've had 4 research publications on DRUFO, and I've also conducted my own study on DRUFO. So I'd say most recently, my focus has been DRUFO.
How has your research been used?
It's used in a few different ways, and it's used in litigation, although this is the first time that I've personally testified. It's also used on administrative advisory boards and also in recommendations to companies for how they should most safely handle their product and how they should recommend their customers safely handle the product.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to qualify Dr. Rogers as an expert in the fields of environmental chemistry and toxicology.
Any objection?
Voir dire, Your Honor.
Brief voir dire.
Dr. Rogers, you testified on direct that you are not a medical doctor, correct?
No, I am not.
You have no medical degree.
I don't.
You have no experience working in a hospital treating any patients?
No, chemicals and pesticides are my thing.
Moving on to the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs. You've never met Mr. Weirs outside of this litigation, have you?
No, I have not.
You've not met with his doctors?
No.
You've not met with his father?
No.
Your Honor, the defense does not object to Dr. Rogers being entered as an expert in environmental chemistry as well as toxicology. However, we do ask that she not testify to any expert medical opinions. Dr. Rogers does not have the necessary qualifications under Rule 702 to testify to such. She does also not have the necessary personal knowledge or qualifications to testify to any causes of specific diseases such as Ms. Weir's non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Any response, Ms. Gallen?
Your Honor, we will not be testifying specifically about medical testimony. We will only testify to things that relate to environmental toxicology. And Dr. Rogers has reviewed Dakota Weir's medical and employment records and knows that she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she did not make that diagnosis. So we have no problem with this witness not testifying about medical testimony.
Dr. Rogers will be accepted as an expert in those fields then. Thank you.
And now, Dr. Rogers, what motivated you to study Drufo?
Well, after Drufo was initially released on the market, I read reports of potential negative side effects, and I wasn't aware of any sufficient studies on its safety. And then after learning that Drufo had been proved carcinogenic in rats, I wanted to investigate the effects on humans myself.
How did you examine Drufo after learning that it's carcinogenic in rats?
I conducted my own study on the long-term health effects of exposure to Drufo.
How did you conduct your study?
I observed and compared 3 groups of people over multiple years. My first group was my control group, and they had never been exposed to Drufo. My second group were those who were exposed to Drufo on occasion, and then my third group were exposed to Drufo on a regular, almost daily basis.
And why did you have a control group in your study?
Control groups in situations, labs like these are just helpful so that we can really take one variable and change that variable and see how they affect the other groups compared to people who weren't affected by the variable at all.
Did you find a connection between Drufo and cancer development?
I did. I found that in my study, those with higher exposure to Drufo also had higher incidences of developing cancer.
According to your study, how much does Drufo increase that likelihood of humans developing cancer?
Well, in my study, the third group, those with regular exposure to Drufo, they were 10 times as likely to be diagnosed with cancer as those with no exposure to Drufo, those in that first group. And that third group was also 5 times as likely to be diagnosed with cancer as those with only occasional exposure, those in my second group.
As we know, the plaintiff has been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Did you find any incidences of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in your study?
I did. The majority of cancers in my study were endocrine and exocrine-based varieties of cancer. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is an exocrine-based variety of cancer, and I did find specific instances of non-Hodgkin's in my study.
How does non-Hodgkin's lymphoma relate to environmental toxicology?
Well, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is not inherited genetically. It's usually caused by environmental factors, which can include exposure to pesticides. And so that's how it relates to my work, looking at how pesticides and chemicals can affect the body. And the toxins and pesticides can be absorbed through the skin or more dangerously inhaled.
How do your findings relate to the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs?
I reviewed Dakota Weirs' medical and employment records, and she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We also know that Dakota Weirs did not use protective gear while handling Lush fertilizer products. And we also know that all Lush fertilizer products sold in the United States contain Drufo.
Where would Ms. Weirs fit into your study?
Well, if we recall the first group, that was my control group. They had no exposure to Drufo. Ms. Weirs definitely doesn't fit into that group. The second group were those with occasional exposure, but Ms. Weirs' level of exposure would put her into that third group of my study, those with regular, almost daily exposure. That same group that in my study had a 10 times greater chance of developing cancer when compared to those with no exposure to Drufo.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Any cross-examination, Mr. Bloom?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Dr. Rogers, I'd like to begin by talking about your study. This study of yours had 3 main groups, correct?
That's right.
Now, specifically, the third group included farmers and gardeners, correct?
Yes, among other occupations, but generally they're the ones who are most exposed to fertilizers.
So yes, it contained mostly farmers and gardeners.
Not mostly, it just contained farmers and gardeners.
Now, within this group, you did not control for any other chemical fertilizers used?
No, that's not right. I took one variable and I changed that variable, but tried to keep everything else as consistent as possible between the groups.
So is your testimony that you did control for other fertilizers?
I tried to isolate the variable as much as possible. It's regular lab practice.
Now, you provided a witness statement today, did you not?
I did.
And you swore that everything within this witness statement was true and accurate, correct?
I did.
And you agreed to include all relevant information?
That's right.
And you were also aware that you had the ability to update the statement at any time?
I did.
But nowhere in your statement do you mention these regular lab practices to control for everything outside of your independent variable, do you?
I didn't think it was necessary to include all of those regulatory measures. It's common lab practice to isolate one variable as best as possible.
But you didn't find that relevant enough to include within your witness statement, which must include all relevant information to today's case, correct?
I didn't find those specific details of my practices relevant.
So you also didn't control for any medications in any of these groups?
I isolated one variable as best as I could, but I didn't provide any information today about whether I controlled for medication specifically.
You didn't include any information about whether you controlled for anything besides Drufo in any of these groups, did you?
Once again, I didn't think it was necessary.
Moving on, your study has not been peer-reviewed, has it?
It hasn't. I haven't started the peer review process yet, although I hope it will be and recreated too.
And it has not been recreated yet, has it?
It has not.
And it has not been published?
No, once again, I haven't started the peer review process, but really this is looking forward for me. I hope the next steps for this study, because I think it's really important that people know this.
So the answer to my question was no, it has not been published.
It has not been published or peer reviewed.
Moving on to some recommendations you made. You testified on direct that you do make recommendations for how companies can protect their users, correct?
That's right.
Now for Drufo specifically, you recommended that those using the product should wear long sleeves at all times?
Yes, and I actually, part of my study was to figure out the best ways to decrease exposure to Drufo, but that specific part of my study was inconclusive. So I can't say with 100% certainty what the best way to protect against Drufo is. But generally for toxins that can be absorbed with the skin or inhaled, it is good to use long sleeves.
Dr. Rogers, my question was simply whether your recommendation was to use long sleeves, and moving forward, I would ask that you answer strictly my question, and it sounded like that was a yes, correct?
Yes.
And most importantly, you recommended that those using Drufo should wear a medical grade mask, correct?
That's right, because generally for exposure to toxins, that's the best way to mitigate the risk.
Now, Ms. Weers wore no long sleeves when working with Drufo?
No, Ms. Weers didn't use any protective gear.
And Ms. Weers did not use the most important piece of protective gear, a medical grade mask, when working with Drufo, did she?
She was only warned against eye irritation, but no, she wasn't using any masks for her eye irritation.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Any redirect, Ms. Dallin?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
You may proceed.
According to the label, was there any good reason that Ms. Weers should wear protective gear?
As I mentioned, unless Ms. Weers was particularly concerned about eye irritation or saw some correlation between wearing a mask and eye irritation, then I wouldn't see how Ms. Weers would know how grave this using protection was.
Was there any warning on the label about any carcinogenic qualities of Drufo?
No, the only warning was eye irritation.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross, Mr. Bloom?
No recross,
In light
Your
of that,
Honor.
thank you. Dr. Rogers, you are excused from the witness stand. Ms. Dallin, is claimant's case in chief resting?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests.
Thank you. Is the defense ready to put on their case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed, Ms. Hirsch.
The defense calls Blake Doncourt.
Good afternoon, Mr. Doncourt. Appreciate your
Good
presence
afternoon.
here. You may proceed, Ms. Hirsch.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Blake Doncourt.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Doncourt?
I'm the CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
And what does that role entail?
It entails many things, but most importantly to me, it means putting out products that we know will be safe in our consumers' hands and guiding the company along with its mission.
And what is your company's mission?
At Lush, we want to create an environment that's as beautiful as it is healthy with our products, and we show that with our dedication to creating such products.
So what progress have you made on achieving that mission?
Thanks to our success at Lush, we're able to donate 10% of our annual profits to various charities working to reduce the global nitrogen footprint, and we've even created our own charity working to reduce pollution in the most polluted parts of the ocean.
So what's been the key to that success?
It's all thanks to our flagship product, Lush Fertilizer.
Could you tell us a bit more about Lush Fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer is so revolutionary in the fertilizer business because of its bonding agent, Drufo.
Now, we'll talk a little bit more about Drufo in a moment, but I'd like to turn your attention to why you're here in court today. Mr. Doncourt, why are you here in court today?
Unfortunately, Ms. Weirs is claiming that Drufo, the bonding agent in Lush Fertilizer, is carcinogenic.
And is that true?
Absolutely not.
Now, could you tell us a bit more about this bonding agent of yours, Drufo?
I'd love to. Drufo is what makes Lush revolutionary. It makes the fertilizer much more effective because it can bind to both the nutrients in the fertilizer as well as the plant itself more efficiently than your average fertilizer, which means that it doesn't have to be sprayed as much, being more cost efficient. And also, because it has to be sprayed less, there's less nitrates running off into the environment. So it's also very healthy for the environment as well.
And how did you come up with the idea for Drufo?
When we say our mission is to create a healthy and clean environment, we mean that. And so naturally, we're always looking for new ways or products we can release, which will help us achieve that goal, which is how we came to Drufo.
How did you test Drufo's safety?
Naturally, right away after we got the product, we went straight to extensive testing. We did years of testing with both our own research and development teams, as well as the EPA.
And what were the results of these tests?
After all of the tests, there was conclusive evidence from both our teams as well as the EPA that Drufo was nothing but safe.
And are you aware of any data that might indicate that Drufo might be carcinogenic in humans?
I still haven't been presented with any valid scientific evidence that Drufo could possibly be dangerous for humans.
I'd now like to turn your attention to a former employee of yours, Mr. Carlson Durst. Did you hear Mr. Durst's testimony earlier today?
Yes, I did.
And what was his role at your company?
Mr. Durst was a member of our research and development team.
And what did that job entail?
It was basically just researching products that we'd give him, doing tests on them, and if any risks or dangers were noticed by them, they would immediately report it higher up so that we could more thoroughly investigate what the issue could be.
And did Mr. Durst work with Drufo while at your company?
Yes.
And did he report finding any safety concerns with it?
No, I never received any reports, especially not from Mr. Durst, until after he was fired from Lush and started working for our greatest competitor, Terra Greenery.
Now, I'm going to shift your attention to something else Mr. Durst mentioned, and that is Exhibit 4. Could you remind the jury of what Exhibit 4 is?
Exhibit 4 is a clearly manufactured email regarding possible safety concerns for Drufo.
And have you ever seen Exhibit 4 before?
I've only seen Exhibit 4 in this litigation.
Now, you said that this email was clearly manufactured. Why do you say that?
Well, I say this for two main reasons. The first being that, as I said, I never received this email. And in fact, only in this court proceeding, this is the first time that I've ever seen this email. And second, at Lush, we handed over our entire email servers to the plaintiffs so that they could search through our emails and find this email or something like it, which they didn't.
Now, I'm going to move on to one other thing that Mr. Dost mentioned, and that is the baking process. Now, what does it mean to bake fertilizer?
It's essentially just as it sounds. You'll throw the fertilizer in an oven or something similar, and you'll heat it to extremely high temperatures. And essentially what this does is it will very minimally reduce the possible risks that you could see from the product.
So, does Lush bake its fertilizers?
No, we don't.
Why not?
Well, the risk reduction that you actually see from the process of baking the product has no material difference in the overall safety of the product.
Mr. Doncourt, how can you be so sure of that?
We did years of extensive testing before we ever even considered putting the product out, where it's been on the shelves for the past 18 years without causing any problems.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, you are aware that your company is being accused of negligence today, correct?
Yes, I am.
And are those accusations true?
I can guarantee you that they aren't. And I feel terrible for Miss Weirs and everything that she has to suffer through as a cause of this disease. And honestly, I don't blame her for being upset and wanting to find answers for why this is happening to her. But by accusing Lush, she's misplacing the blame.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Ms. Mullens, do you have any cross-examination of Mr. Doncourt?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Doncourt. I'm going to be asking you some questions about your testimony today. You just testified that you donate 10% of your profits to charity.
That's correct, yes.
But Lush itself is not a charity.
No, we are still running a business, but we are looking to be very environmentally friendly and help out with the environment as much as we can.
Lush is a privately owned business for profit, isn't that correct?
Yes, that is still correct.
And this business has investors, correct?
As most businesses do, yes.
And you call your investors vultures, correct?
Unfortunately, that is often how they are, but yes, they are.
And these vulture investors demand a good return on their investment, right?
They do.
And part of giving these vulture investors what they wanted, you need to turn a profit, correct?
Yes.
And part of making a profit is not spending what you deem to be extraneous money, right?
That is correct.
Like baking Drufo, for example.
While baking Drufo is very costly, I assure you that the reason we don't bake Drufo isn't because of the money.
Even though baking Drufo would eliminate any risk that your fertilizer could cause cancer in people like Miss Weirs.
After our extensive testing, we already concluded that Drufo is safe, and there's no real material difference that you get from baking the product. So, yes.
Mr. Doncourt, though, you do admit that baking your fertilizer would remove any risk that it's carcinogenic, right?
There would be no real difference. It would be microscopic, but yes, that is true.
A small risk is still a risk, though. Isn't that right, Mr. Doncourt?
Our scientists proved that Drufo would be safe for use in our consumers' hands, but yes, it could be phrased that way.
Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to share Exhibit 8 for the purpose of authenticating.
You may proceed.
Mr. Doncourt, do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, I do.
What is this exhibit?
It is a table which would sort of show what cost we would save by not baking the product.
And who created this table?
I did.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of the table that you created?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for Exhibit 8 to be entered into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 8 will be admitted and published to the panel.
Mr. Durst, this table shows that you could increase your profits by 6% by not baking Drufo in the first year, correct?
Yes, that's what the table says.
And based on Exhibit 8, your conclusion is that in the following years, baking Drufo would have even less of an impact on your profits, correct?
Yes.
Specifically, after the first year, not baking Drufo would only increase your profits by 2%, correct?
That's accurate, yes.
That means just for 2 cents for every dollar you make, you could have baked Drufo, correct?
Once again, the reason that we don't bake Drufo is not because of how much the cost would affect our company. It's mostly due to how baking the product would not change its safety at all. I am still running a business and I need to make decisions like this occasionally. And if the product is already proven to be safe after years of extensive testing and hard work, we're not going to bake the product.
Mr. Doncourt, I don't believe you answered my question. Would you like me to re-ask it?
Sure.
This means just for 2 cents for every dollar you make, you could have baked Drufo, correct?
Yes.
So for 2 pennies for every dollar, you could have eliminated any possibility that Drufo could have caused Miss Weirs to have cancer, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. This is asked and answered.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. Previously, I asked about whether or if for 2 cents for every dollar, Mr. Doncourt could have baked Drufo. In this question, I'm specifically specifying about the possibility of Miss Weirs developing cancer.
Overruled. You may go ahead and answer, Mr. Doncourt.
Could you please re-ask the question?
Yeah. For 2 pennies for every dollar you make, you could have eliminated any possibility that Drufo caused Miss Weirs' cancer, correct?
Drufo, whether it's baked or not, isn't what's caused Miss Weirs her cancer. I could have spent 2 pennies for every dollar to bake the fertilizer, but baking the fertilizer or not wouldn't have impacted whether or not it's carcinogenic. It's already safe.
Although, Mr. Doncourt, again, you did admit that baking Drufo was just too expensive for the little risk that it alleviated, right?
Yes, the product is already safe and it alleviates next to none for risk-wise. And it is quite expensive when you're looking at the total amortization table. So yes.
So yes, baking Drufo would have eliminated any risk.
Asked and answered. Move on, Ms. Mullins.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. I have no further questions for you.
Thank you. Any redirect, Ms. Hirsch?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Mr. Doncourt, it was just said that you do need to make a profit to keep running your business and paying your investors. Would baking Drufo, is there any way that baking Drufo might have impacted this profit to a point where it would be an actual problem for you?
No, it wouldn't have.
And just to clarify, how much of a role did the financial situation play in your decision not to bake Drufo?
The financial aspect of baking Drufo or not was heavily outweighed by the fact that at Lush, we had spent years of testing with both our own departments as well as the EPA to conclude whether or not Drufo would be safe. And the conclusions were that, yes, Drufo would be safe regardless of if you bake it or if you don't bake it. And if I had ever known that Drufo would be or possibly pose risks to any of our consumers, I would have never released it out to the public. And I still haven't seen any evidence that Drufo could be carcinogenic.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hurd. Any recross in light of those questions, Ms. Mullens?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Mullens. And thank you, Ms. Doncourt, for your testimony today. You are excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any further witnesses for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Skylar Weirs.
Ms. Weirs, you may go ahead and testify. Mr. Squirrel, you may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Skylar Weirs.
Ms. Weirs, what is your current profession?
I am a scientific investigative journalist.
What do you do in your job as a scientific investigative journalist?
I specialize in modern agricultural technology, and I spend my time writing and researching for a scientific magazine.
Tell the jury about the scientific magazine you work for.
I work for The Rationalist, owned by the nonprofit organization, the Rationalist Society, and we are dedicated to encouraging our readers to look into the real science of things and not believe in misinformation.
What are your qualifications to testify here today?
I have spent almost a year researching the subject, modern agricultural technology. I've also gained information from the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, also known as the USDA and the NASDA. I've written several articles about modern agricultural technology in the past for The Rationalist.
On this topic of your qualifications, please tell the jury about your educational background.
I chose to hold off on college for now because my debut article was very well favored, so I decided to pursue my passion in writing in scientific topics.
And you've talked a lot about modern agricultural technology. What is that?
Modern agricultural technology, or modern agritech for short, is the use of technology in agriculture to increase yield, profitability, and efficiency.
And going back to your articles, Ms. Weirs, tell the jury about your research process while writing your articles.
I read publications by agritech companies, and then I tracked down and reviewed the research and studies involved. I also obtained historical and statistical data from the USDA and the NASDA.
On this topic of modern agritech, can you please tell the jury if you know what Drufo is?
Yes, I do.
And what are your experiences with Drufo?
I wrote a series of articles on modern agricultural technology for The Rationalist, and I wrote an article about Drufo.
While you're writing your article about Drufo, did you research the health effects of Drufo and other fertilizers?
Because my article was questioning the link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's disease, yes, I did study the health effects of Drufo.
Thank you. Your Honor, the defense offers Ms. Weirs as an expert witness in the field of modern agricultural technology with an emphasis in fertilizer under Rule 702.
Any objection?
Permission for a brief voir dire, Your Honor.
You may proceed with voir dire.
Ms. Weirs, to get a medical degree, you have to receive a 4-year undergraduate degree.
Yes, that is correct.
Study for 4 years in medical school.
Yes.
And complete a 4-year residency, right?
Yes.
So that would be at least 12 years of training after high school.
I suppose so, yes.
But you had no training after high school.
No, I did not, although I've done extensive research on modern agricultural technology.
And Ms. Weirs, you only studied Drufo for 1 year.
I wrote a series of articles on modern agricultural technology, and yes, one of the articles that I wrote about was specifically about Drufo, and I specifically studied it for that one article.
During that year, you read articles.
I read publications by agritech companies, and then I reviewed the research involved and also gained information from the USDA and the NASDA. Yes.
But you didn't do any work in the field of agritech. right?
No, while I gained information from reputable government sources and publications by agritech companies, I didn't do any studies on my own.
So you've never worked with these products that you're testifying about either?
Again, while I've done extensive research on them, no, I did not.
Meaning all of your knowledge about Drufo comes from reading articles that someone else researched and published, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, while this witness has established that they've reviewed publications and information maintained by the USDA and NASDA regarding agritech, the witness has failed to prove that they spent considerable time researching Drufo, as a single year is not sufficient to fully qualify this witness as an expert. Therefore, while I do not object to Ms. Weir's being qualified in the field of agritech, I do object to any expert opinion testimony about Drufo or its effects.
Mr. Squirrel, what's your response?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense states that Ms. Weirs does have necessary knowledge to testify about Drufo and other fertilizers. Ms. Weirs has spent a year reading and researching about Drufo, and under Rule 702, an expert witness must have one of the 5 following traits: knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. Ms. Weirs doesn't just have one of these traits when it comes to Drufo, she has 2. First, Ms. Weirs has knowledge. As I have already stated, and as Ms. Weirs has already stated, she has spent a year reading and researching publications from reputable government sources. And she has used all this information to write an article which has given her experience as to take a complicated subject, such as how fertilizers work or how Drufo works, and distill it in a way in which the average person, such as the juror, can understand. It's clear that Mrs. Weir's informed opinion will aid the jury in delivering a just verdict for both parties.
Any response, Ms. Donda?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs simply does not have the experience or knowledge to testify about Drufo or its effects, as that is not within the field of agritech where she is qualified to testify.
Ms. Weirs will be qualified only in modern agricultural technology and may not testify with regard to opinions outside of that field.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, what is Drufo?
Drufo is a bonding agent that was developed by Lush Fertilizer to be used in their products.
How does Drufo work?
Drufo bonds to the grass roots and causes it to wash away less quickly.
When did you write your article about Drufo?
It's hard to get a specific date down, but it was before Dakota got diagnosed with cancer.
Tell the jury more about this article you wrote.
I wrote this article that questioned the supposed link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's disease because it isn't likely that it actually causes it. From what I've researched, the evidence just isn't there, and there are much clearer links to other fertilizers and cancer.
Tell the jury about these other fertilizers.
Almost every fertilizer.
Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge, as this witness is testifying to information that is beyond the scope of agritech, as the effects of Drufo are not within agritech.
I understand that Ms. Weirs is testifying with regard to what she researched and what was in those research papers. So I'm going to allow a little leeway for Ms. Weirs to go ahead and testify. You may proceed.
Yes,
Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
Of course. Tell the jury about these other fertilizers.
Almost every single fertilizer contains harmful carcinogens, such as nitrates. Nitrates are linked to several types of cancer. This is because they do not stay in the soil and can contaminate land and water.
What is Drufo's effects on these carcinogens?
Drufo bonds to the fertilizer's active ingredients, which include potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen, and cause them to wash away less quickly. This entails for less chemicals needed on the grass and reduces exposure to those chemicals.
On the topic of Drufo, is Drufo a pesticide?
Yes, and because of this, Drufo actually doesn't need to use carcinogens found in pesticides.
Tell the jury about these carcinogens.
Glyphosate and arsenic are harmful carcinogens that are commonly found in pesticides. Lush fertilizer doesn't need to use these carcinogens because Drufo already is an effective pesticide.
Ms. Weirs, in your expert opinion, do you think it's likely that Drufo is linked to any long-term health effects in humans?
Objection. This witness does not have the expert opinion to testify to the effects of Drufo in humans.
May I have a response, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Squirrel.
Fertilizer and Drufo is contained within the field of modern agricultural technology, or modern agritech, as we've been referring to it. As Ms. Weirs has defined for us, modern agritech is any technology used to increase the affordability and increase the yield of crops. Fertilizers and pesticides do this, and so therefore they're considered modern agricultural technology, which Ms. Weirs is an expert of. Therefore, she has the ability to testify to them and their effects upon the human body.
I am going to sustain the objection and ask you to ask your next question, Mr. Squirrel.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, I would like to talk to you about your family now. What is your relationship to the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs?
She is my twin sister. While we don't have this stereotypical twin relationship, we're family.
Do you know of any jobs Dakota had before her diagnosis?
Yes, she worked at Haven Landscaping.
Tell the jury about Dakota's job at Haven Landscaping.
She was 14 when she first started. She worked there for a while and was exposed to many harmful chemicals. This company allowed its employees to work without protective gear, and Dakota was one of those employees.
Ms. Weirs, in your expert opinion, do you think lacking safety precautions such as these are dangerous to workers?
Yes, prolonged exposure to chemicals that Dakota would have been exposed to is harmful in humans, so yes.
Ms. Weirs, why are you testifying today?
I am here to testify because I believe in my research about this truly awful disease. I love Dakota, but I believe that Lush did not cause her cancer and that she is going after the wrong people.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Squirrel. Ms. Danda, do you have any questions for Ms. Weir?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
May I proceed? Yes, you may proceed with cross-examination.
Ms. Weirs, you're testifying against your twin, Dakota Weirs, correct?
Yes, I am.
You and Dakota don't necessarily have the best relationship, though, do you?
We used to have an amazing relationship, but we grew apart in the past few years.
Because after Dakota got cancer, your family had to pay for the medical bills, correct?
Well, my dad cut me off after my decision to go to college, and our mom had been dead, so our family was just kind of...
So your family did have to pay for the medical bills?
Yes.
And they were pretty expensive, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
So expensive that your parents could no longer support you financially then?
That's right.
You're a gambler as well.
Objection, Your Honor. Prejudicial over probative under Rule 403.
Ms. Danda, any response?
Your Honor, this goes to the witness's financial situation, which may have created a potential bias against Miss Dakota Weirs.
Mr. Squirrel?
Your Honor, we can discuss Ms. Weir's financial situation without going into any of Ms. Weir's hobbies, and Ms. Weir's hobbies may be unduly prejudicial to her.
I'm going to sustain the objection. Please move on.
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Weirs, specifically, your parents could not pay off your gambling debt, correct?
My dad couldn't, no. He had already cut me off by then.
That must have been pretty hard for you financially then, right?
Yes, it was.
So hard, in fact, that you had to get a second job as a server at Applebee's to make ends meet.
Objection, Your Honor. Prejudicial over probative, Rule 403.
Explanation, Mr. Squirrel?
Yes, Your Honor. The jury may have misinformed and preconceived notions about the intelligence of a service worker. By bringing in Ms. Weir's second job, it'll be unduly prejudicial to her, as she's already been qualified as an expert, and so therefore has already been confirmed by the court to have necessary knowledge.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes, you may respond, Ms. Danda.
The following testimony is merely to demonstrate Ms. Weir's difficult financial situation.
And I apologize. I don't understand the relevance of it. So, Ms. Danda, why don't you go ahead and explain that to me?
Your Honor, the financial situation of Ms. Weir's is relevant as it goes to her bias again against Dakota.
I'm going to allow very limited testimony in this regard, so keep it very brief.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, it was so hard financially that you had to get a second job as a server at Applebee's to make ends meet.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about your experience researching Drufo. Ms. Weir's, as we previously established, you only studied Drufo for 1 year?
Yes, I've studied it for almost an entire year.
And during that year, you only wrote one article about Drufo and cancer?
During that almost a year that I was researching modern agricultural technology, but I also did extensive research for my one article about Drufo. So yes.
And generally, as an investigative journalist, you write articles, correct?
Yes, I do.
In these articles, you write about pseudoscientific hit jobs, as you refer to them.
Yes.
You claim these hit jobs were financially motivated?
Yes, I do.
One example you gave of this was how Monsanto utilized GMOs to monopolize the commercial maize market.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
What's the relevance of this testimony, Ms. Danda?
Your Honor, this goes to the lack of credibility in the examples that Ms. Weir's was using to claim the financial attacks on Drufo.
Mr. Squirrel, do you have any response?
Yes, Your Honor. If this is the case, then it's improper character evidence. The plaintiff is trying to use previous actions of Ms. Weir's, such as writing about articles, and use it to say that when Ms. Weir's wrote her article about Drufo, she was acting on those same character traits. Under Rule 404, this is improper character evidence.
I'm going to allow the question, so overruled. You may proceed and answer the question, Ms. Weir's.
Can you repeat it, please?
Yes. One example you gave of this was how Monsanto utilized GMOs to monopolize the commercial maize market and then was sabotaged by its competitors.
That's correct.
And its competitors did so by attacking GMOs.
Yes.
You provided this example to suggest the same thing is happening with Drufo, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So your argument is that the claims saying Drufo causes cancer are rooted in finance rather than scientific motives.
Well, as a scientific investigative journalist, I'm here to promote the data of things, although that could be a factor. Yes?
But Drufo is not a GMO, is it?
No, it's not. It's a bonding agent used.
There is no evidence that Drufo is being financially attacked, right?
That's right.
There's no indication then of these same financial motives used by competitors using GMOs in play with respect to Drufo, right?
I suppose not, but I'm here to testify to bring the truth to facts about Drufo.
Lastly, you published an article saying Drufo doesn't cause cancer.
Yes, I authored an article that questioned the supposed link between Drufo and specifically non-Hodgkin's disease.
So your reputation as a journalist relies on your claim that Drufo is safe.
My reputation as a journalist is to my belief in promoting the facts and the data and my articles for The Rationalist.
Meaning if significant evidence were to emerge that Drufo does cause cancer, your reputation would fall apart.
Objection, speculation.
I'll allow the question since Ms. Weir's has been designated an expert in the field.
Yes, Your Honor.
Could you repeat the question?
If significant evidence were to emerge that Drufo does cause cancer, your reputation would fall apart.
I have no way to say what will happen to my reputation, but I'm here to bring the truth to light, and the facts say that Drufo does not cause cancer.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Danda. Any redirect, Mr. Squirrel?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, how does your financial situation affect your testimony?
It does not in any way. As I said, I am dedicated to bringing the data into things, so it does not.
And speaking of this data, does your financial situation change the data or facts in any way?
No, it does not.
And Ms. Weirs, why are you cut off from your father?
My father cut me off after my decision to go to college, and I have no hard feelings for Dakota for this.
And you were asked a lot about your previous articles on other modern agri-tech companies. And I just want to ask you, Ms. Weirs, is your article about Drufo based on facts?
Yes, I did sufficient studying on Drufo to find this out.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any recross, Ms. Danda, in light of Mr. Squirrel's limited redirect?
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Danda. And thank you, Ms. Weirs, for your testimony today. You are excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Will the defense call their last witness, please?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor.
Good
Hello.
afternoon, Mr. Williams, or Dr. Williams. I apologize.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Dr. Devin Williams.
Dr. Williams, what is your current profession?
I'm currently the leader of the Toxicology Research and Development Labs at Lush Fertilizer. I'm also the outgoing chair of the company's ethics committee, and I teach a few classes on toxicology.
Before we go over the case today, I'd like to go over your qualifications. What education did you receive?
I received my undergraduate through PhD degrees at CSU in various forms of toxicology. I then went on to do a post-PhD program at the University of Utah in pharmacotoxicology.
What occupational experience do you have?
I used to be an assistant professor at CU Denver Medical Grad School. I am currently an assistant professor at the University of New Mexico's College of Pharmacy and a visiting professor at CSU School of Pharmacy.
Can you please define toxicology for the jury?
Of course, toxicology is the study of the nature, effects, and treatments of several types of toxins.
Do you have any certifications in toxicology?
I am certified in several forms of toxicology across Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and New Mexico.
Your Honor, at this time, I offer Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in toxicology under Rule 702.
Ms. Dallin, do you have any objection?
Permission to voir dire, Your Honor.
You may proceed with voir dire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, you haven't published any articles on the toxicological effects of Drufo, correct?
I have not published any articles on the toxicological effects of Drufo specifically, no.
All of your articles have been solely about poisons and drugs, correct?
These mainly fall under toxicology, so yes.
Toxicology and pharmacology both have a specific emphasis on the study of drugs, correct?
That is correct, yes.
But Drufo is not a drug, right?
No, it is a chemical, but it does have similar effects and chemical makeups to all drugs.
You haven't done any personal research on the toxicological effects of Drufo either, correct?
Personally, I have not, but I have reviewed the studies that Lush has done.
Your Honor, I object to this witness being qualified as an expert to testify on the toxicological effects of Drufo specifically.
Mr. Bloom, do you have any response to the objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams has several qualifications under Rule 702, such as knowledge, education, training, and experience in the field of toxicology, which is the study of the effects of chemicals on the human body. As Drufo is a chemical substance, he has plenty of personal knowledge and expert qualifications to testify to Drufo as well as its effects on humans.
Dr. Williams will be accepted as an expert in toxicology. You may proceed, Mr. Bloom.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, I'd like to begin by talking about why you're here today. Are you here to give an expert opinion today?
I am.
What is that opinion?
In my expert opinion, Drufo does not cause cancer of any kind, especially non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
I'd like to talk a bit about your work at Lush Fertilizer. You testified earlier that you were the head of the Lush R&D labs. What kind of work does that entail?
Largely, I oversee the environmental aspects for our fertilizers.
Have you worked with Drufo in this capacity?
I have.
What conclusions about Drufo did you come to through your work?
Through my work, I've come to the conclusion that there's no statistically significant link between Drufo and cancer of any kind, nor non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
How did you come to this conclusion?
The data I analyzed was all below a normal confidence level.
What does this mean?
The data was not correlated with an elevated risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in Drufo users compared to people who don't use Drufo.
What specifically in the data showed this?
In a large group of people, a few are going to develop the disease, like in Dr. Rogers' study. However, in the case of Drufo, these people have turned out to be outliers through statistics.
Dr. Williams, we've heard a lot about Drufo today. I'd like to ask you, how does Drufo work?
Drufo binds the plant to the fertilizer, which means that less needs to be sprayed to meet the requirements, and as a result, less runs off.
How does this compare to other fertilizers?
Other fertilizers need a lot to be sprayed to meet the requirements, and as a result, lots of excess nutrients run off, and they, followed by running off of the plant, they run off into bodies of water, causing a process called eutrophication.
What is eutrophication?
Eutrophication is the buildup of excess nutrients on the surface of a body of water. This causes an algae bloom that contains bacteria that's harmful to humans and makes a lack of O2 that kills organisms in the water.
So to clarify, do fertilizers with Drufo cause eutrophication?
They do not.
So has the safety of Drufo ever been called into question?
While not over its possible carcinogenic effects, it was banned in the EU over environmental concerns.
Let's talk about this ban. What specific concerns led to Drufo's ban in the EU?
The European Union's nitrate directive states that no fertilizer that attributes more than an incidental accumulation of nitrates may be used.
Dr. Williams, what is nitrate?
Nitrate is essentially when excess nitrogen from the fertilizer runs off into the soil and is essentially fermented by bacteria that live there.
So how does this nitrate directive apply to Drufo?
While in real world conditions, Drufo will lower the amount of nitrates, in the EU's unrealistic lab settings, Drufo will meet the threshold for the ban, unfortunately.
How are these lab settings unrealistic?
These are bacteria that Drufo will never come into contact with. And to be honest, this just makes it unrealistic in many ways.
I'd like to move on to the plaintiff's concerns about the possible effects of Drufo. Have you read Dr. Rogers' study on Drufo?
I have.
What is your expert opinion of this study?
In my expert opinion, Dr. Rogers' study has 3 main flaws.
What are those flaws?
Dr. Rogers compares scientifically varying subjects. Dr. Rogers' study has not been peer-reviewed or replicated, and Dr. Rogers has a major bias.
Let's start with the first flaw. How does Dr. Rogers compare scientifically varying subjects?
Dr. Rogers compares farm laborers to casual gardeners to people who are neither, which creates highly inaccurate results.
How does this create inaccurate results?
These people are exposed to a wide variety of different conditions that could cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma other than Drufo.
Moving on to the second flaw, What does it mean for a study to be peer-reviewed?
A study is peer-reviewed when qualified members of the scientific community review a study for merit and a possible bias.
What problems arise if a study has not been peer-reviewed?
It means it could contain wild inaccuracies or possibly even a bias.
What is the importance of replication?
For a study's results to be corroborated, many members of the scientific community who redo the study have to find the same results. Nobody except for Dr. Rogers found these results. And as a result, Dr. Rogers' results cannot be corroborated and the study could not have been successfully replicated.
Finally, the third flaw. How does it appear to you that Dr. Rogers is biased?
Dr. Rogers' entire study set out to find the possible harmful effects of Drufo on humans. When somebody finds what they set out to find, I always question the results because it is my policy to do so, and they most likely have a confirmation bias.
Finally, Dr. Williams, I'd like to ask you about your overall conclusions in today's case. Based on your expert opinion, does Drufo cause cancer?
In my expert opinion, Drufo does not cause cancer.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Ms. Dolan, do you have any cross-examination of this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, you've led the toxicology research and development labs at Lush for 7 years, right?
That is correct, yes.
So for the last 7 years, it's been your job to make sure Lush fertilizer is safe for the public to use.
Yes, it has.
If Lush fertilizer was proven to be unsafe, it would have been under your watch, correct?
Lush fertilizer is completely safe. And under my watch, I've made sure I'll take all the steps to make sure that it is safe. So yes, I suppose it would be under my watch, but yes, but it's not unsafe, so.
You're being paid by Lush to testify today, correct?
I'm not being paid to testify today. I'm a paid employee at Lush, though.
Okay. And on a separate matter, as you said, Drufo is banned in the EU, correct?
Drufo is banned in the EU. That is correct over environmental concerns, however.
And Lush plans to submit refindings for reconsideration of EU approval?
Yes, we do. And as soon as we finish our study and make sure it is highly accurate.
You admit that this lawsuit could change that.
Unfortunately, this lawsuit could change that if the untrue facts that Drufo does cause cancer are found to be the result of this case. However, I do believe that Drufo does not cause cancer and that the EU will see how environmentally safe it is in addition to how safe it is in humans.
So you state if a US court were to find that Drufo causes cancer, it would create a whole host of new bureaucratic roadblocks with the EU, right?
Once again, of course it would, but I believe that the EU will come to see how safe this product is, both environmentally and in humans.
Because you work for Lush and because Lush is trying to get this product sold in the EU, you have a financial interest in this lawsuit.
Even if I do have a financial interest in this lawsuit, it does not impact my testimony today at all. I am a research toxicologist by training. I am here to give my testimony in toxicology.
So that was a yes, you do have a financial interest in this lawsuit.
Even if I do, it does not impact my testimony, but yes, I suppose I do.
And now you criticized Dr. Rogers for comparing the exposure of Drufo for farm laborers, casual gardeners, and people who didn't do either of those things, right?
That is correct.
You stated that a valid study would need to compare farm laborers who use Drufo to farm laborers who use fertilizers without Drufo.
That is correct.
However, you yourself never did a study of your own to compare these groups of farm laborers, did you?
It was not necessary. We've already proved how safe Drufo is, and it was not necessary to do another study.
So that's a no. You did not conduct a study of your own.
Once again, it was not necessary, so no, we did not.
And Lush did not do a study to compare these groups of farm laborers, did they?
Lush did not do a study to compare these groups of farm laborers because our main concerns were finding whether this product is carcinogenic, and we found that it is not.
And you told us a lot about the conclusions that Lush came to, but you never told us anything about how Lush came to these conclusions or how they gathered any data.
I mean, Drufo, we didn't tell you about how we came to the conclusions, but we conducted a study as Dr. Rogers didn't, as all scientists do.
Lush did not conduct a study. They looked at statistics. Isn't that right?
I do believe that we conducted a study, actually.
Well, you never told us the sample size that Lush used in their data, right?
That is not in my witness statement, but I can give you an answer.
Well, in your witness statement, you never told us the sample size, did you?
It was not necessary or relevant to add the sample size, only that we did a study that we have looked over several times to confirm its results and that it is a safe study.
And you never told us how long Lush studied people who used these fertilizers?
That was not relevant for the case.
That's a no. That's a no.
If you could let me finish, I was about to say it was not relevant, so no, we did not.
You never told us what variables Lush controlled for.
We did, once again, it was not relevant for today's case to say what variables we included. The study was meant to find the possible carcinogenic effects. There were none. So I stated that the study found no carcinogenic effects, but no, I do not outright state the variables.
But you would agree that these are important lab procedures, aren't they?
These are, of course, important lab procedures, but they aren't relevant to today's case.
But the jury has no way of understanding how reliable your conclusions are because you haven't adequately explained Lush's research. Isn't that right?
I have had several decades of experience in toxicology, and I have confirmed that this study is reliable. And I do not believe that the jury needs any more other than my word that this study is reliable and proves that Drufo is safe.
Now, you stated Lush's CEO, Blake Doncourt, needed you to keep Drufo products industry-leading, environmentally aware, and cost-effective, right?
That is correct, yes.
However, you did not state that one of these priorities was the health of Lush's customers. Isn't that right?
I do believe that is encompassed, and environmentally aware.
However, that doesn't relate to your customers, does it? The health of your customers.
I do not believe, and even if it doesn't, we do not need to. Our product is so safe that we don't need to outright state it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Williams. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Any further redirect, Mr. Bloom?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Dr. Williams, does your employment at Lush affect your testimony in any way?
It does not. I am a research toxicologist by training. I am here to give the facts for the jury of how Drufo is not carcinogenic.
And does Drufo's emphasis on environmental awareness affect its safety towards Lush's customers in any way?
Of course it doesn't. That just means we are both environmentally aware and safe in humans.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Ms. Allen, that was a very short redirect. So do you have any cross-examination based on those questions?
No, I do not, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dallin. Dr. Williams, thank you for your testimony today. You are excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow the parties 30 seconds to gather whatever they need to start closing remarks.
Yes, Your Honor, and the defense does rest.
Thank you. Are the parties ready to proceed with closing remarks?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you both. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lush prioritized profits over people. Your Honor, members of the jury, Dakota Weir's life has been ruined. All of her hopes and dreams have been snatched away from her. You heard today that Lush could have completely eliminated all risk of their product, giving Dakota cancer by simply baking their fertilizer, an extra cost of only 2 cents on the dollar. Instead, Lush prioritized their profits over the health of their customers. The plaintiff has the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning it is more likely than not that Lush Fertilizer, the defendant, was negligent based on 4 elements. First, we had to prove that Lush manufactured a fertilizer containing Drufo. This element is not in dispute. Second, we had to prove that Lush was negligent by failing to prevent the product from creating an unreasonable risk of harm. You heard Carson Durst testify that Lush knew there was a risk in using their product and that Drufo should be baked to eliminate any safety risks. However, you heard Blake Doncourt testify that Lush Fertilizer did not bake their fertilizer, even though for just 2 cents for every dollar, they could have eliminated all risk of their product being carcinogenic. Lush was prioritizing their profits over their customers. Third, Dakota Weirs had to prove that she was a person that the defendant should have reasonably expected to use their product. As Dakota Weirs testified, she worked as a landscaper, meaning that Lush Fertilizer should have expected that she would use their product. Fourth, and finally, we had to prove that Dakota Weir's injuries were caused by Lush's negligence. You heard the plaintiff's expert, Dr. Rogers, testify that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is caused by environmental factors. It is not genetic. Ms. Weirs testified that the only difference she and her twin Skylar had in their upbringing was that Miss Dakota Weirs worked as a landscaper and Skylar didn't. As we know, Skylar Weirs does not have cancer. As Dr. Rogers showed through her study, exposure to Drufo increases the likelihood of developing cancer tenfold compared to people who have never been exposed to Drufo. The defense's expert, on the other hand, relied on mere statistics and provided no context as to how Lush came to the conclusions that there is no correlation between Drufo and cancer. On the issue of whether Lush used reasonable care, the risk of harm was certainly not obvious to Dakota Weirs, as she thought that the only risk in using Lush Fertilizer was possible eye irritation. Well, why did she think that? Well, this belief was based on Exhibit 1, which showed the label as shown on Lush Fertilizer, which only contained a warning about eye contact. As you know, eye irritation is not the same as cancer. While she was told by her employer to wear long pants and long sleeves, how could long pants and long sleeves protect against eye irritation? And how could a mask protect against eye irritation? Miss Dakota Weirs was not warned about the risk of getting cancer. Ladies and gentlemen, Lush did not use reasonable care to warn their users about the risk of getting cancer because they were prioritizing profits over people. For these reasons, the plaintiff has proved Lush's negligence by a preponderance of the evidence. The defense is now going to ask you to find that Dakota was comparatively negligent, but based on the evidence they have presented today, they have failed to meet that burden. In order to prove comparative negligence, they had to prove that Dakota Weirs failed to do something that reasonably careful people would do to protect themselves from the claimed danger created by the product. However, it was not reasonable for Dakota to expect to protect herself against cancer when the only claimed danger that Lush informed their customers about was eye irritation. Your Honor, members of the jury, if you find in favor of Dakota Weirs, we ask you to consider the total amount of damages caused by Lush fertilizer, taking away the dreams of a girl and her only lasting connection to her grandfather. Although we cannot reverse what has happened to Miss Weirs, we can put an end to Lush prioritizing profits over people. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hirsch, do you have a closing statement for?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
The plaintiff just told you that this is a case about a company that chose to put profits over people. But the plaintiff is misplacing the blame. It's not fair what Miss Dakota Wheels is going through, but that doesn't change the facts. And the fact of the matter is that Lush Fertilizer is not to blame here. Drufo is not to blame. And ultimately, that is what this case is about, misplaced blame. Now, the judge will instruct you on the jury instructions further, but in summary, the jury instructions lay out what the plaintiff needed to prove today. And the plaintiff needed to prove, by a preponderance of the evidence, that 1, Lush Fertilizer was negligent, and 2, that this negligence caused Dakota Wheels' cancer. They have failed to meet this burden. Now, first, the plaintiff needed to prove that Lush Fertilizer failed to take all the proper precautions they should have to protect its customers from a potential danger. But the only piece of evidence the plaintiff presented regarding this potential danger even existing is the faulty study Dr. Rogers told you about. Remember, this study is unreviewed, it's unreplicated, and it's unpublished. Now, they also claim that Lush allegedly knew that this supposed potential danger existed, but the only evidence they had to present there was the clearly falsified email that Mr. Doss testified about. The email that the plaintiff couldn't find when Lush Fertilizer turned its entire email systems over to the plaintiff. The email that Mr. Doss chose not to report anything about for 18 years until there was a lawsuit. Now, the plaintiff is trying to say that Lush Fertilizer doesn't care about its customers, but you heard Dr. Rogers testify about the importance of protective gear and masks when using fertilizers, and you saw her exact recommendations on the Lush Fertilizer label. You also heard about the extensive testing Lush's research and development team and the EPA put Drufo through, and how both found that Lush was completely safe. Additionally, you heard from Dr. Devin Williams, who has a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology, and he told you about the research he reviewed and how he came to the same conclusion, that there was no link between Drufo and cancer. Now, second, the plaintiff also needed to prove that this alleged negligence on Lush's part is what caused Dakota's cancer. But the plaintiff failed to prove that. In fact, the plaintiff failed to prove that Drufo is capable of causing cancer at all. And you heard Dakota Wheels admit that she spent years not wearing the protective gear she knew she should have. We're working with both Lush products and we're working with other fertilizers. You also heard from Ms. Skylar Wheels, and you heard her testify about how Lush Fertilizer is unique in that its inclusion of Drufo means that it doesn't include other known hazardous chemicals that have been linked to cancer, such as arsenic and glyphosate. Members of the jury, the plaintiff is trying to place the blame for Dakota Wheels' cancer on Lush Fertilizer, but the plaintiff has failed to provide any evidence clearing the names of the multiple other fertilizers Ms. Wheels worked with. They didn't provide a list of these fertilizers, and Ms. Wheels admitted that she didn't do any research into them. Therefore, there is no one in this courtroom who knows what hazardous chemicals those other fertilizers may have contained. Now, the plaintiff needed to prove both parts of their case today, but they failed to prove either one. They didn't prove that Lush was negligent. They didn't prove that this negligence caused Dakota Wheels' cancel. It's not fail what Dakota Wheels is going through, but that doesn't change the facts. And it doesn't mean that we caused damage, because Lush Fertilizer didn't cause damage and Drufo is not to blame. Therefore, I ask you, jury, do not let the plaintiff misplace the blame. Find Lush Fertilizer not liable on the plaintiff's claim of negligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. This concludes, oh, actually, did you have time for rebuttal, Ms. Allen?
It looks like there's only about 5 or so seconds, Your Honor, so that's all right. Thank you.
Did you wish to use those 5 seconds?
That's okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
You are welcome. Thank you, both teams, for your wonderful presentations today. I'd like the panelists to come back online or on video so that I know whether they have completed their ballots.
This is Michelle. I have completed my ballot.
Thank you, Ms. Moran.
Michelle, did you hit submit?
Not yet.
Okay. I will let you know when all 3 have hit submit and we get them on our end.
Okay.
Thank you.
And this is Tim. I just clicked my submit.
Thank you, Mr. Jafek.
And this is Ms. Ollis, and I just clicked my submit.
And I submitted.
Let's
Great.
wait and make sure that.
Yeah, we have all 3. We're good.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay. Everybody can come back on video. I want to thank all of you for a wonderful presentation. Boy, was this a very competitive round. Both teams did really fabulously. I'm so impressed. I have been involved in this mock trial program since 1995. So since before you guys were born, probably. Actually, certainly. And every year that I see teams like yours, it gets better every year, and it just so impressive how much you get out of this program in terms of being able to work on your feet and answer so quickly to things that I see attorneys before me struggling with. So and I know that this is a canned set of facts that you've been working with for a long time, but I have attorneys with 20 years experience come before me and not be as smooth as you are. So it's just very impressive. So I want to thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and let the scoring panel introduce themselves to you and give you any feedback that they would like at this point.
I'm not going first.
Okay, so Mr. Jafek, I'm going to call on you first.
Sure. So I'm Tim Jafek. I'm an assistant U.S. attorney at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Denver. So that means I defend the federal government in all sorts of civil cases. I do civil defensive work. So similar to the kind of things that you all do. So I have 3 points. I think first, everyone did a really, really excellent job. I was really impressed by how well prepared you were, and how it was clear that you each had a plan in doing what you were doing. And my cat's coming here now. In what you were doing, but things changed. The judge made different rulings, different objections came up, and I thought everyone did a really excellent job, kind of adjusting to the changing situation on the fly. and that's definitely something you have to do as a lawyer and in life. One place where I saw that particularly, and you're thinking on your feet, was responding to each other's arguments and objections. You did focus on the substance of the other person's argument, so that was really good. Another place where I saw a lot of good choices was in cross-examination. Sometimes you didn't get people to answer, directly. And I think usually you made good choices in deciding not to insist on a yes or no question, because even though they weren't answering yes or no, they were making their character clear by the way that they were answering. So, there's no need to go further on that if they're showing kind of their true colors there. And finally, my last point was, you've had the opportunity to see how a lot of different people do things. And I think it's really important to, as an attorney, as in life, kind of be the best yourself. You're not going to be able to kind of conform yourself to be like some other attorney. You have to take your own best qualities and the weaknesses that we all have, and do the best with what you have and present yourself authentically. And I think everyone did a good job at that. So congratulations. You've earned some good rest. And as the judge said, I was very impressed with all of your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaffe. Ms. Moran, are you ready now?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Moran. I am a paralegal of 7 years at a law firm in Fort Collins, and we do civil litigation. I also work for another attorney in Fort Collins. And so with a lot of experience and a little bit in the courtroom, that was so much fun to watch. It felt real. It felt like almost the real teams there. I saw some aggression. I saw almost bulldog and a little bit of some people, some very passive attorneys, quiet, meek, but yet then came out really strong in the end. So I made a lot of notes, but all the witnesses seemed very believable. I wrote that down on all of them, like as far as the acting and the staying in character, but there were a lot of defensing, and which would be real in the courtroom, so it was wonderful to watch. I can't believe your age and how well and how good you are. And I'm excited to see you as you grow. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Moran. Appreciate your comments. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Elise Ellis, and I am an attorney in Fort Collins. I've been practicing now for 11 years. I believe I just watched the championship round. You guys were stellar. I've been doing this. I think I've scored now maybe 5 years. I've missed the last couple because it always seems to fall on state wrestling weekend, which can't do in our family. So it's really glad. I'm really glad to be back. The virtual platform, as you all know, we've been using it in court, well, you probably know, for a couple of years. And you guys, you rolled with it. I think, as the judge said, attorneys have been practicing a long time. She sees different things in the courtroom. This video virtual platform is new for all of us, and you guys just put up those exhibits. I mean, it was very impressive. I made some notes for most everyone. The two experts blew me out of the water. It is very, very difficult to do the role as an expert, with, especially in toxicology, all the language. Both experts were beyond stellar. I made a note on, several of you, great roadmaps. that really helps a jury to know where you're going. And I just think so many of you did such a really great job on the roadmaps. Ms. Hirsch, on nailing down the witnesses' answers, stellar. Miss Letko, am I pronouncing the last name right? I think Letko. You had me believing you were a true research expert. That was awesome. Mr. Squirrel, really good use of the rule numbers. We were taught that in law school, and frankly, in practice, it doesn't get used very often like that. And I thought, actually, several of you did that, but Mr. Squirrel, you did that several times, and I really noticed that. Also on direct, on redirect, almost every single redirect, really great rehab by all of you. Restating of, Mr. Horowitz, great restating of questions on cross-examination. I thought that was, you deflected those so well, and you, yes, but, and you got it in there. And that was really difficult to do. Ms. Dolan, great at getting out the bias on cross. I thought that was stellar. And I know I didn't get all the notes, but every single one of you, again, just, I'm very impressed. I wish I could have all of you come be interns for me, frankly. But just very impressive, your professionalism. I'm so glad they changed that rule to the professionalism of giving you guys points, because it really is an important part of our job as attorneys. We can't sit in there in the courtroom and, doing this, chomping on gum, checking my phone, we can't do that. And I didn't see any of y'all doing that. And that is really important. So I'm really glad you guys are getting that opportunity to get those scores this year. And I think, I think I got them all. So thank you,
Miss,
for your work.
Thank you, Miss Alice. And again, I'd like to echo the comments of the panelists. I wish you the best of luck going into the final round, in actually finishing this final round and potentially going into the championship round. I do want to remind everybody that this program is done by the Colorado Bar Association. I think they should receive a huge kudos for how well they organize this. Everything from drafting the brief that you have to use to organizing all the volunteers and bringing it all together so that you can have this amazing opportunity. Because it has made you come together in a format that shows how professional you are, and how, as I say, how you can use, a document to be analytical and, just very quick on your feet and very composed and focused and obviously very dedicated. So I want to congratulate you and thank the Bar Association for putting this on. So a round of applause for everybody and good luck, guys. Take care.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, panelists.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Are we getting off too?
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We're done.
All right, thank you very
Great
much.
program.
Thank you, guys.
What are we going to find out, Ashley? what's happening here?
Yeah, so there is a live stream link for the awards ceremony. If you would like to watch that, we're going to start that at 4:15. So if you go to the page where you logged in, you have all the YouTube streaming links in one of the tabs at the top. And then you can click on that and it'll take you to the award ceremony. And then we will also be live streaming the championship round if you guys would like to watch.
I'm on the thing, and there's a welcome tab, a competition tab. Oh, actually, I see the championship round. Oh, on the right. I'm sorry, I completely did not see that.
Okay.
I apologize.
Oh, no
So
worries.
you said 4:15?
Yeah, so the award ceremony will start at 4:15, and then we'll announce the two teams moving on, and then their round will start at 5 p.m.
Okay, and anybody can attend the championship round?
Yeah, anyone can watch the live streams, yes.
Okay, excellent.
Ashley, I have a question for you. On my scoring sheet now, I have something on the bottom that says the winner this round based on total points was plaintiff. So does that take into account the three scores?
No, so that would have been based on your scores. You were just supposed to mark who won, who had more points.
Okay.
So yeah, no, the winner of your round will be determined based on what all three of you got, but it won't show up on your individual score sheet. That's only what you picked.
Okay, then I messed up.
Okay, well, it's okay. I can go in and fix it on my end because we can see the total points.
Right.
So
my total points for defense is 1 point higher than total for.
Okay,
plaintiff.
so I'll go in and I'll fix that so
Okay.
that it
Okay.
matches what you put.
I guess as many lawyers, numbers aren't my strength. So
Yeah, I just fixed it, so we're all good. Thank you.
Great.
Ms. Alice?
Thank you, Judge. I see they used to